We continue to see more victories for the Second Amendment community, and yesterday was no exception. We had a couple of big ones with Senate Bill 1160 seeing the firearms registration portion gutted and amended from the bill. We also overcame a pretty big hurdle with the fight to save the deer on Catalina. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, Senate Bill 1160, that call for a mandatory registration of all firearms in California is dead. Here to talk us through that is the legislative director of CRPA, that is Rick Travis. You can find him on the Firing Line Radio on AM 590, The Answer, every Saturday at 1 o'clock. Rick, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, guys, if you want to directly contribute to Second Amendment lawsuits as well as legislative efforts like these, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Hit that notification bell so that as these things come out, you are the first to know so that you can help educate others within the community. After all, the goal is to make sure as many people are as educated as possible when going to the ballot box in November for the general election. So, Rick, let's just sort of round this out for a little bit. We've been talking about Senate Bill 1160 for a while. It is one of those bills that's drawn a lot of focus in the firearms community. It's also been tried several times throughout the United States history. This is the firearms registration bill. What exactly is the bill in its entirety? Why does it deserve so much attention? And what's taken us to this point where we're at now?
So, in a very quick mode, because the bill was killed, and that's an amazing thing that we've been able to accomplish. But there's 3 points I'll make. This is a bill that is about setting up the framework for mandatory confiscation of firearms. And that's why it is so critical that we had gotten out when we did, put it together with the bill package of about 4 other bills that would set up that infrastructure. Those 4 bills still are in play, and we're still fighting those because we can't let one plank of this infrastructure be created here in California, or it will be used nationwide. The bill 1160 was not able to get support. We were able to get a lot of opposition, like literally organizations representing over 500,000 Californians stood up against it. We fought out of the chute very, very vehemently on this bill. And the author, Senator Portantino, has now taken this bill and amended it to basically increase fines for the illegal act of opening and carrying without the proper permit, if you're in a county that allows for that, or if you just open carry illegally in a county that doesn't allow for that, it just increases the fines at this point. We're going to be fighting that bill, make no mistake about it, but that bill is far less egregious than the one it was gotten amended from.
So you mentioned, I guess, what we would consider the early signs of victory in this. We did a video about it last week. That was during the Senate committee hearing where the bill was pulled for consideration so that there was no vote on it. Your assumption then was, there was no support for it. So why is he going to try to push something through that he doesn't know if he's going to be able to get the votes for? Here now, a week later, we've seen that it was gut and amended. I'm curious, just for the educational purposes, what exactly is a gut and amend? Because what it sounds like you just said, Senate Bill 1160 still exists. What's been killed is its proposal to institute a firearms registration in California.
Yeah, we have gun amendments every year to the tune of sometimes 50 to 100 bills across the spectrum of politics. And out of the 5,000 plus are put up annually. So sometimes it's a greater number than that. In some of the bills that are actually firearms bills, when we say we've killed them, what's actually happened is in this case, they get gun and amended away. A good example of a bill that happened to recently was 1030. That was a firearms bill by Manshine, and we put up enough against it that Manshine said forget it, and he got amended to an educational bill. Gun amends were something that was brought forward about 20 years ago, and the reason is at one stage in our politics here in California, if you had made a grammatical error, if you'd made any kind of technical error, the bill was dead for the year. And so obviously there were bills that were designed to put up, say, something as innocuous as a traffic light, because several people might have been killed or injured on a particular corner, well, that could get delayed the entire legislative cycle because of a technicality. So the idea of a gun amend was brought up that you could just go in and change that technicality so the bill could live and get passed and heard. What has happened since then is that has been weaponized to the point of we've had several bills that dealt with environmental policy, that dealt with animal care, that dealt with water, that dealt with transportation costs, you name it, medical care, that have been gun amended after they cleared the House of Origin. So in the Senate, a Senate bill or an Assembly bill in the Assembly, get gun amended when it gets into the secondary House and change from one of those things into an anti-gun bill. So it's always enjoyable to watch an anti-gun bill leave, obviously, and go to something else. It's more enjoyable for me when the bill's just flat out killed and dies a death. But in this case, I think Portantino doesn't want to be seen as losing. And so in an attempt to save face, he's basically taken an open carry law that exists, and he's just trying to up the amount of the fines and that structure on it at this point. Now, he could change that and make it a little bit more weaponized. And so we're looking to see what he does, but we're going to continue the pressure on this bill. But the point is that I want to make sure everybody understands, while this is a huge victory, and it is, and this happened because of the work of so many of our members, so many of our, a shout out to our chapter legislative teams have been doing incredible work this year with us. To those who have engaged in our one-click politics, you guys are amazing and helping us with this, but this is not the end of it. Remember, this is one part of a 5-part package to institute mandatory firearms registration. They've taken the gloves off. They're coming for us. It's no longer some boogeyman kind of a thing. No, this is real. And they're that arrogant. And so now we have to fight back 10 times harder, which we're doing. And so we've got the first of what will hopefully be our 5-part victory in this domain.
Well, absolutely. We're going to be pushing for that. I guess I'm kind of curious of your opinion on the matter. Being up there in Sacramento, watching a lot of this stuff go down, there are lots of organizations, there are a lot of legislators who aren't exactly in the habit of not supporting this kind of legislation. You just mentioned some good things that were going on our side. Is that enough to push those people who are normally supporting these kinds of bills to not support it? What exactly was the catalyst there, in your opinion, for a firearms registration bill to not get support?
I think there's multiple things. Definitely, this is an election year, and I think some of the arrogance has taken a serious ding in Sacramento. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people that thought, well, we can do anything we want to the gun community, and there's no retribution. However, you had several key members of the anti-Second Amendment community that range from Portantino himself to Katie Porter down in Southern California that was running for Senate. You have David Min, who is in a battle that will probably see him lose his office and not gain a new office. You've watched this crew that the governor actually thought was all going to move with him to Washington, D.C., and that crew was soundly defeated in the primaries, thanks in large part to the action of firearms owners. And what I really want to point out is we don't have the full power of that group of firearms owners. We are gaining power, we are getting bigger and more resolved, but this is the first of the baby steps. And if you look at the success of these baby steps, just imagine for a moment what we could be doing if we were able to get to the 50% mark of that coalition. Nothing could stop us, not a darn thing. So I'm hoping this will be the wake-up call to a lot of people, like, we can make a difference, we are making a difference, and we're going to now triple and quadruple down. We're not just going to go home and say, well, that was fun.
Well, speaking of that advocacy, we can certainly point to something else that happened just yesterday with the Avolon City Council. We got a big victory in them rejecting a memorandum of understanding. This has to do with another topic. It's the Catalina deer slaughter that we've been fighting for a little while over there. Rick, can you give us the overall picture and then the pointed picture of what happened here in Avalon yesterday?
Yeah, so as many of you know that have been following us, we have been working on preventing the Catalina Island Conservancy and the Catalina Company and their owner, Allison Wrigley Rockhouse, from being able to exterminate all the mule deer on Catalina Island for multiple reasons. They're great for the tourism, they're great for the island ecology, despite what the Conservancy asserts. There's science that states it on both sides. A lot of what they've used has been trying to compare a dinosaur to an apple by saying, oh, these are islands where we've done similar things, but those are unpopulated islands. Those were islands in a completely different methodology of handling the ecology of an island that has impacts. And even members of the Conservancy would have to admit that they have brought invasive species of different types, from grapevines to different types of trees that aren't provable to have ever been on those islands. So it's kind of a pick and choose science that they have used, and we have been trying to push for science that's been requested by the Department of Fish and Wildlife for the better part of a couple of decades. So that fight led to last night a city council meeting in Avalon, where there was a consideration of a memorandum of understanding, which was intriguing because the the MOU, as they're called, was based on things having taken place that haven't taken place. One example would be, oh, we're going to increase the number of tags because I'll obviously mean that there will be more hunters and therefore we'll be able to reduce the deer population. But there were challenges with that idea because there were processes that could not have been gone through until after the MOU was put in place. So it was trying to get someone to agree to a bunch of hypotheticals that aren't there. Thanks in a very, very large part to our members and our people who subscribe to our one-click politics. We put it out yesterday. We had thousands of respondents. It was noted by the Avalon City Council and City Administration that they received thousands of emails in opposition. And as a result, folks, once again, we have a win. The Avalon City Council said they will wait on the Department of Fish and Wildlife to see what their stance is, but they denied the MOU.
Like how does this decision weigh in the overall battle? The overall battle is with the Conservancy and what they want to do with the deer, right? The city of Avalon, we also touted a success a few months ago when they had another city council meeting where they put some rules in place that protected the deer in Avalon, right? Overall picture here, this Avalon City Council, is this a statement to the Conservancy that the people who live there want the deer to stay? Is it inconsequential? When you're trying to piece all of these things together, do all of these grains of sand make a heap? How does it actually help?
So I'm going to condense it all down to what you just asked. I mean, I think basically your question is, what does all this mean? And here's what it means. It means three things. The first thing it means is obviously the people on the island, the vast alliance that has now spread around the globe with over 120,000 people involved, the coalition of not likely partners such as our organization and the SPCA and the Humane Society and others all joining forces is unprecedented in California politics. And so that in of itself is a statement that we can put together groups of people and fight a local action. Kevin, you have years of experience fighting local actions in various places, from gun ranges to lock storage, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at that, you look at this, you look at the size of the population and the size of the people and their money going against that population size, this is literally a David versus Goliath story. And so I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, beyond saving the deer, it's looking at a national organization. It's looking at a national issue of, we've got chronic wasting disease that is rampaging most of North America. We have some isolated deer populations that we've been able to protect. I would argue the mule deer on Catalina is probably the best protected of that. But there could be some other people that make some other great scientific points. But the point is, we're going to need 2 or 3 of these deer herds, once we figure out a solution for chronic wasting disease, to be able to bring the deer populations back up without that disease. And so protecting these deer and keeping them safe is a utmost priority and has to stay that way. So again, a victory like last night stacks yet another time when the people came together and said, we don't want this precious resource wasted by aerial gun shooting by the Conservancy, which is really, people need to see the irony. This is a conservancy, and most lay people, if you said, hey, what do you think about a environmental conservancy, wiping out animals with guns? I think if you went to your local supermarket, especially a place where vegans, they would go, oh, that would never happen. And yet, that's what the proposal is. And I think the third victory is we are pushing home to the state of California, to the legislature. We got people coming out from the legislature, looking at the island. That was talked about last night in a meeting. These are all critical moments where we're advancing that the science, the North American model of conservation management, et cetera, should be the premier way we make these judgment calls. And that is being reinforced with each one of these battles.
Well, certainly a couple things to hold your head high about if you are a firearms owner. I think too, the sentiment, if it hasn't already, needs to continue to change. Living in this understanding that the little guy doesn't count, we continue to see effort after effort pay off and be successful in advocacy at the grassroots level. The more people we can pull into that, the more successful we can be. As far as Senate Bill 1160 is concerned, as far as this battle with the Conservancy is concerned, what is your outlook going forward here for the rest of the year, Rick?
Well, I've heard from many of our members, many people when I'm out in the public speaking, who have come to me and said, we just can't win. Well, today was like yesterday was like a major league doubleheader. We had two big events in the same day, and we clearly won both of them. So to those who have been naysayers, those of you who've been down, felt beat up, this should be just the opposite of, not only did we win on one plank of fighting for the Second Amendment rights, we won on two completely different ones, two different sides of the state, and clear victories, not debatable victories, clear victories. And so we need to keep up because, folks, again, we are winning.
Yeah, keep it up, we shall, and remain vigilant as we always are. Rick, I want to thank you for the work you're doing up there in the Capitol. I want to thank you for coming on today.
Always a pleasure to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content and want to continue seeing these kinds of videos, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It is a way that you can directly contribute towards this Second Amendment litigation and legislative efforts, as well as in programs around the state. We'll keep an eye on this as it keeps going forward. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.